Okay, so what could a homeless philosopher from ancient Greece possibly have in common with a $100 million podcast deal? And for that matter, the future of AI? Well, the answer is this timeless and honestly incredibly valuable human quest, the search for what's real. So, yeah, let's get into it.
Stand out of my sun. It is, without a doubt, one of the most defiant, powerful, and, let's be honest, kind of baffling lines in all of philosophy. And to really get why, you just have to picture this. It was spoken by a man with literally nothing to the most powerful man on the entire planet. So what is the connection? What's the invisible thread tying this ancient showdown to the, super high-stakes world of modern media? Well, as we're about to find out, the answer is pretty much everything.
Okay, so to really get a handle on our modern obsession with authenticity, we have to go way, way back. Back to the beginning, to this legendary showdown between a king who had conquered the entire world and a man who had conquered himself. So, let's talk about this guy, Diogenes. Who was he? Well, he was the original cynic, but, and this is key, not cynical like we mean it today. For him, it was all about rejecting, everything society said was important. Wealth, power, status, even basic table manners. He literally lived in a giant ceramic tub in the middle of a marketplace. And he believed that real freedom, true freedom, came from living a completely natural life. His protests against all that superficial stuff, they were pretty extreme. For him, it wasn't about being crude. It was performance art, all designed to show everyone else how absurd their social rules were. His entire life was just this one long act of radical, painful honesty. Okay, so picture this scene. You've got Alexander the Great. He's maybe 20 years old, but he's already a living legend, the most powerful man in the known world. He hears these stories about this, crazy philosopher living in a tub. So, surrounded by all his generals and soldiers, he decides to go meet him. And this is the moment, the big confrontation. Alexander, in this huge display of power and, generosity, says, "Ask for anything you want. I'll give it to you. Riches, palace, you name it." And Diogenes, he doesn't even move. He's just lying there and he looks up and just asks the most powerful man on earth to please move. "You're blocking my sun." Can you imagine? It was this complete, total rejection of everything Alexander represented. Power, wealth, status, all for something so simple, so real, the feeling of the sun on his skin. So, of course, Alexander's men, they all start laughing. They think it's a joke. But Alexander, he was floored. He wasn't angry. He was actually impressed. He admired, and this is a quote, the haughtiness and grandeur of the man who had nothing but scorn for him. I mean, think about that. In that one moment, the king who had absolutely everything saw true freedom in the man who had absolutely nothing. It was like he realized that this kind of authentic self-possession, that was a kind of power even he couldn't conquer. All right, so let's jump forward, like way forward, 2,000 years. We're going to see how this exact same dynamic plays out, but with a very, very different kind of king. We're talking about Howard Stern, a guy who built a whole media empire on his own version of that same radical, painful honesty. To really understand the Howard Stern empire, you have to get that he's lived two different lives. First, there was the shock jock Howard, the guy who pushed every single button, crossed every line imaginable. But then, there's the man he became. Genuinely one of the most respected, most empathetic interviewers on the planet. So the big question is, how does that happen? How do you go from one to the other? Well, the shift was huge, and it was deeply personal. He went through a divorce, a major personal crisis, and it led him to years of really intense psychotherapy. He's talked about how he started to see his old on-air self as this childish narcissist. So that painful honesty he was famous for, he turned it on himself. And what was so amazing is that what made people connect with him wasn't just the big celebrity interviews anymore. It was hearing him live on air, working through his own stuff, his own flaws. The goal wasn't shock value anymore. It was about making a real connection.
But every king, every kingdom eventually faces a challenger, right? So just as Stern was mastering this new kind of deep, authentic connection, a whole new media guard was rising up. And they were about to completely redefine what authenticity means for a whole new generation. And that brings us to Alex Cooper in her podcast, Call Her Daddy. So in 2021, she signs this massive $60 million deal with Spotify. I mean, a number like that, it basically put the entire old guard of media on notice. It was a clear signal there's a new power in town.
And believe it or not, that was just the start. Her next move was even bigger, a $125 million deal. And where did it take her? To SiriusXM, which is, Howard Stern's home turf.
Just to put that into perspective, her reported earnings for just 1 year, over $22 million. So look, this isn't just a podcast anymore. It's a full-blown media empire, and it's built on this totally new model of direct, unfiltered connection with an audience, speaking a language that, frankly, the old guard might not totally get.
And right there, that's it. That's our modern Alexander and Diogenes moment. You have the established king, and according to reports, he's a little unsettled by this new force. And it's not really about the money or the fame, it's about something bigger. It's about a fundamental shift in media, where this new kind of authenticity, one that speaks directly to a younger generation's experiences, has become the most powerful currency there is.
So let's pull back for a second. What is the common thread? We've gone from a philosopher in a tub to a shock jock to a podcaster. Why is this raw, real, authentic connection so powerful? And maybe more to the point, why is it so incredibly valuable? Well, the answer really lies in this powerful marketing idea called emotional branding. This is basically the science behind the art that we've been looking at. It doesn't matter if it's Howard Stern's intense vulnerability or Alex Cooper's sort of relatable big sister vibe. The principle is exactly the same. What makes people loyal isn't just the product or the content, it's a feeling. It's all about building a brand that connects with who people are, what they need, and what they hope for. And you know what? There's a whole playbook for this now. It's about things like aligning your brand with a good cause, like Tom's Shoes did, or using really powerful storytelling, like those Dove campaigns that challenged beauty standards. And a huge one is building a community, making people feel like they're part of something bigger than themselves. When you boil it down, it's really the strategic engineering of that feeling of a real, authentic connection.
Okay, so we've looked at authenticity as a philosophy, as a media strategy, and as a branding tool. So what's next? Where does this whole quest go from here? Well, the next stop is the technological frontier.
So here's the problem we're facing. A pioneer in this field, Rana El-Kalaoubi, she calls it an empathy crisis. And what she means is that when we talk to each other online, text, email, whatever, we lose something like 90% of how we actually communicate. All those non-verbal cues, right? The facial expressions, the tone of voice, the body language, the stuff that actually builds trust and real connection, it's just gone. It disappears into the digital void. We get this illusion of connection, but without any of the real substance behind it. So what's the proposed solution? It's something called emotional AI. And the whole idea is to give our technology emotional intelligence, EQ. It uses things like computer vision and machine learning to actually analyze our faces and our voices to figure out our emotional state. The possibilities are kind of mind-blowing. It could be used in cars to see if a driver is getting sleepy, or in telehealth appointments to spot signs of stress. It could even add an empathy score to your emails to tell you how they might land. The ultimate goal here is to literally code empathy back into our digital world. So when you lay it all out like this, you can see this incredible, unbroken line through history. This quest for what's real. It never stops. It starts with a defiant philosopher just wanting some sunlight. Then it evolves into a radio host bearing his soul to millions. Then it transforms into a podcaster building a huge community through shared vulnerability. And where does it end up? It ends with an algorithm. An algorithm designed to read our emotions and then sell that very feeling of connection back to us at a massive scale. And that leaves us with one final, really crucial question. In a world where feelings can be branded and empathy can be coded into a machine, what happens to that ancient human search for what's actually real? Are we using all this to get closer to genuine human connection? Or are we just getting better at building a more perfect and way more profitable illusion of it?